I recently posted a video on why Mazda will likely hit bankruptcy by 2030, and it seems investors actually agree with me. Mazda's stock price has the lowest price to earnings ratio of any automotive company on the earth. And yeah, it's not really even close. When you look at the performance of Mazda versus a company like Ford, well, my friends, Mazda is in deep doo-doo. I mean deep, so deep, it's impossible to extricate themselves from the enormous pile of poo they're currently sitting in. If you look at these numbers, you'll be shocked. If you look on Google Trends, you'll see 99.97% of stories right now are on Tesla versus Mazda. However, the real story here is what has happened to Mazda and what is about to happen to investors in this car company. They're about to lose, well, possibly everything. The data shows this company will be extinct, but unfortunately, it's going to happen faster than what it otherwise could. Why? Because the CEO has just disclosed Mazda's plans for the next 10 years. Mazda has one important car market. It's the United States. Everyone else is basically nothing in comparison. And it's openly just said it is completely disinterested in electric cars in the US. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking. Great to see you. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back, everyone else. This video has taken me a while to put together, but to really think about what's going on here, you need to consider this from different avenues. That's what I will be doing when I present at Fully Charged in March in Sydney, in April in London, and then in October in San Diego in the United States. I'll be showing you why you should be very wary that this exact phenomenon that's just happening to Mazda right now will happen to other automakers, and the media will keep completely silent. There is zero, I mean literally zero articles on the internet anywhere from any of the media showing what has happened to Mazda this year. And it's one of the biggest collapses in the history of any automotive company. I mean, it is shockingly bad. Yet, there's seriously zero information from the media who claim that they're in this for your interest, the public interest. They serve the public good by telling you what's really going on. There's nothing. Let's have a look at the numbers. But first of all, let's have a look at what Mazda is saying they're going to do in the United States, which is their most important car market. Mazda global car sales by market in 2021. The United States, 333,000 vehicles. That's 20% of all sales for Mazda worldwide were in the United States, right? Next highest, Europe, 190,000 sales. Next highest was China, 184,000. In 2021, Mazda sold 1,287,000 vehicles worldwide. If you put those three car markets together, China, Europe, and the United States, they represent more than 700,000 vehicle sales. In fact, clearly well over 50% of Mazda's global vehicle sales. Closer to 60%, in fact. And Mazda is saying it will invest $11 billion into electrification over the next decade. Actually, 1.5 trillion yen, which is $10.6 billion. Now, initially, the media in the US reported that that plan would include Mazda making electric cars in the US as early as 2026. But now the CEO has disclosed that that was false information. The media completely made that up. It was like something that would sound nice for American consumers. Yeah, Mazda's going to invest in EVs in the US. Yeah. And they just made it up. So he's actually told us the real story within the last 24 hours. Here's what he had to say. Automotive News said to Mazda's CEO, what is Mazda's strategy for EVs in the US, which is your most important car market in the world by, well, actually, it's double the size of any other car market that Mazda currently has. If you look at the US, eventually we would like to produce EVs there one day. But the earliest timing would be the latter half of phase 2. 2027. There are so many things we need to research and study first. We are not considering establishing a dedicated EV plant in the United States at all. When Mazda thinks about building an EV, the Alabama plant and the Mexico plant are the two plants we can think about in terms of the US market. In Alabama, we introduced the CX-50, not an EV, but we have to make sure the CX-50 is nurtured into a profitable product. And we must nurture the Alabama plant into a plant with high quality. Clearly, they're focusing on internal combustion engine cars at those plants. That's their focus at the moment. That's what he's saying here. There are so many uncertainties, like the employment situation, the battery procurement situations, and the Inflation Reduction Act requirements. As soon as we see clarity, we will make a judgment. What that means is Mazda have not decided to make EVs in the US at all yet. They haven't made any decision. As soon as we see clarity, we will make a judgment. That's not them saying we plan on making an EV factory. What about the fact that they said we do not plan to build an EV factory in the United States? That's his quote, direct quote, right? So the media have just made up this nonsense because it serves a narrative, right? It serves a narrative of, internal combustion engine manufacturers, all these automotive manufacturers will battle Tesla and they're going to take down Tesla. That's their narrative that they like to create. It makes people feel good, sort of like this anti-Tesla, this anti-Elon Musk narrative going on right now. I think that's a clear reason it gets people to click. Automotive News said to Mazda, is Mazda working in-house on its own battery technology? They said, we're doing research in that area. We are working from the chemical reaction level. We would like to establish those technologies one day. In phase 3, from 2028 to 2030, we will make a judgment as to whether we can produce those batteries ourselves, based on the progress of development and whether we can establish a good financial basis for it. So Mazda is saying they won't make a decision on whether or not they will make EVs themselves until at the earliest 2028 and the latest 2030. So they're not going to make a decision on EV batteries for at least 6 years, whether or not they make them. Automotive News said then, can such a small automaker as Mazda realistically achieve its own battery breakthrough? Mazda said, we have just started the research, so we can't make a judgment yet. Automotive News then asked Mazda, is the industry over-investing or under-investing in EVs? And the CEO said this, compared with 2 years ago, customers' acceptance of EVs has really increased more than we expected. I'm sure EV volume will continue to increase, but I can't predict the timeline of EV penetration because there are so many uncertainties. We have to ask why we are making EVs. The answer is to achieve a carbon neutral society. To achieve a carbon neutral society, we need to increase carbon neutral power generation in tandem with the increased penetration of EVs. Otherwise, it's pointless. It won't help carbon neutrality to increase EVs in markets that rely on coal and oil-based power generation. In other words, Mazda CEO believes carbon can't be reduced by driving EVs, by producing EVs. That's clearly a myth made up by who? The car industry and the fossil fuel industry, who want to keep on selling you polluting cars. Because why? They don't have EVs to sell you. What does this all mean? Well, the IRA exists as of January. In fact, the IRA rules exist as of now, but they start going into place for the actual incentives in January. That means Mazda doesn't plan to produce electric cars in the US for at least 5 years. It's not going to ever produce actual electric car factory, and it's clearly focusing on manufacturing internal combustion engine vehicles in the US. So that means 5 years minimum before Mazda even starts building EVs in a non-EV dedicated factory. In other words, Mazda are about to lose its car market, which is the US car market and its most important car market. Does the data suggest they're heading in that direction now? Yes, in fact, it does. But it's got to be sped up. Massively sped up. By the time we hit 2027 and Mazda maybe potentially begins building EVs in the US, EV market penetration will have hit a minimum of 60% in the United States based on the current trends. However, Mazda's car sales this year in the US are down 15.8%, so 16% decrease versus last year. And this story is much, much worse for its other two most important car markets in the world. Next, of course, after the US in terms of importance for Mazda, is equally China and Europe. Put the sales from those two areas together, China and Europe, and you're looking at around 370,000 car sales, meaning well over 20% of Mazda's global car market. However, that figure used to be very different. For example, in China in 2018, Mazda sold 289,402 vehicles. That was for the first 11 months of 2018. So to compare like with like, the first 11 months of this year in China, Mazda sold 93,510 vehicles. That means sales in China have declined in the space of 3 years by 102%. In other words, Mazda is about to lose China. Now, are they really about to lose China or am I exaggerating? Well, actually, the statistics I just shared with you were very flattering. If you think about it, if we compare the last 6 months of this year, the sales trend is even worse. Looking at 2018, car sales for Mazda in China from May to November averaged around 29,000 sales per month. 29,000 per month from May to November. May to November this year, average sales in China are 7,000. 29,000 to 7,000. And that figure is simply trending lower every single month. Companies like BYD, Tesla, Leap Motor, GAC, they're all just saying, hey, thank you very much, Mazda, for not selling electric cars in China. And Mazda's saying, oh well, we don't really care. Actually, no, they're not saying that. They're saying this. They're saying the reason their cars aren't selling in China is because the Chinese are racist against the Japanese. They're saying that right now there's anti-Japanese racist sentiments in China. Therefore, that's the reason. They're saying that this will all change within a few months. People will get over their emotions. They'll move on from their racism against the Japanese and they'll start buying Japanese cars again. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mazda, this has nothing to do with Chinese racism or the fact that the Chinese have an anti-Japanese sentiment. It's simply the fact that you don't sell any compelling electric cars, period, in China, where consumers want EVs. That is the reason. Time for you guys to actually just admit reality. Now, what about Europe? Clearly, the second biggest market for Mazda in the world. Therefore, it's extremely important. Well, yeah, things are going pretty bad for Mazda in Europe as well. In Europe in 2019, Mazda sold 223,438 vehicles in the first 11 months of the year. The only reason I'm saying the first 11 months is because we only have the first 11 months of this year data so far, of course, for 2022. So that's the fair way to compare them. First 11 months, 223,438 sales. First 11 months of this year, 122,733. That means it's been a 58% decline in the sales of Mazda's vehicles in Europe in the space of 3 years. 102% in China, 58% in Europe, 16% in the United States. And those are the three most important car markets for Mazda in the world. Guess how many electric cars they make right now? Well, it's hard to say, but in the US so far this year, Mazda have sold 340 electric cars. Period. And they're going to stop selling their only electric car in the US that they sell, the MX-30, because it has a range of 100 miles and nobody wants it. Fair enough. Would you want an electric car with a range of 100 miles when it costs as much as that does? I don't think so. Listen, if it was $15,000 US, that would be a reasonable price for a car with 100 miles of range. But it's not. It's a lot more expensive than that. On the 1st of January 2018, around 4 years ago, Mazda's stock price was over $7. Today, the stock price is sitting at around $3.80. Clearly, investors agree with my sentiment. The stock price has nearly halved in the space of less than 4 years. Investors usually are stupid. They're generally aware of a company and its intrinsic value. They're generally aware of the likelihood of a company succeeding into the future. The price to earnings ratio of Mazda, like I said, is sitting at 4.6. That's the lowest price to earnings of any car company in the world. Investors are clearly very wary. Therefore, they're valuing this car company at a very low earnings multiple. On the 24th of April 2020, the Oakdale Post in the United States penned an article, Mazda, the land of the setting sun. Without a multitude of revitalizations, one of Japan's most unique automakers may very well cease to exist. It says, the auto industry's darling is starting to show potential. The company, however, has left itself exposed to failures in key areas, each continuing their suppression from top-tier Japanese auto sales. Mazda is vulnerable to economic failure through its lack of model design variability and its overextended design cycles. An industry standard selling model ranges with similar designs is popular practice, but while lucrative, are incredibly high risk, especially to smaller manufacturers. Mazda's true Achilles heel is its design cycle length. These cycle lengths, referring to how long a specific look stays on a model, typically they range anywhere from 1 year to 15. For Mazda, they average around 5. Recently, industry designs have aged quicker, while Mazda cycles remain the same. This is a crucial error. Mazda's final stake, they said, lies in its own insecurity, stemming from a fear of competition, leading to its reticence from innovation. If the automaker doesn't stop acting cowardly, it'll open itself to widespread failure. From magazines to television, the auto market is dominated by the opinion of reviewers. Clearly, the writing is on the wall. Mazda car sales are declining at a rapid rate. They don't make any compelling EVs. They have no compelling EVs on the horizon at all that they've even announced. And their investment into EVs, while important and necessary, is way too late. By the time anything comes from that investment, the market will have well and truly moved on. Mazda's percentage of the global auto market will have continued to decline. And frankly, they will not be able to support paying their current debts. It's just impossible. In my presentation next year at Fully Charged Shows, I'll have more details on why Mazda will very likely go bankrupt within the next decade. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Bye-bye.